Hi guys, my name is Nora. I have a very rare genetic condition. When I tell you what it is, you might find it appealing. You might even wish you had it. But once you hear the whole story, you'll know that it's not something to wish for. That's because reaching my age with this condition is considered unusually successful. The formal name of my condition is congenital insensitivity to pain. It means that I don't feel pain. I don't feel any aches either. For example, if someone stands on my foot, I won't feel it. It doesn't hurt if you stick a needle in my arm. I never get headaches. It doesn't hurt if I accidentally cut myself while making food. When you hear all this, it sounds like a superpower, but it really isn't like that. Pain and aches are vital for our health. Let me tell you about something that happened last year. One evening, I got out of the shower. I realized my skin was all red when I was drying my hair. It turns out that the water was too hot when I was showering. I didn't notice it because I didn't feel any pain. I had second-degree burns on my back, my arms, my neck. The next day, I had blisters everywhere. If I could feel pain, I would have felt that the water was too hot and I wouldn't have been burned. As you can see, feeling pain helps us protect ourselves. We're too vulnerable without it. This is a bit embarrassing, but let me tell you something interesting. I can't feel it when I have to pee, so I always go to the bathroom at the same time every day. My body is used to it now. If I don't follow the schedule, I don't feel anything, even when my bladder is about to burst. I can only tell when I start peeing myself. So I set alarms to remind myself to go to the bathroom. I know it's a bit gross, but I wanted to make sure you understand my situation. So if I don't know when I need to pee, does that mean I don't feel hunger? Luckily, that's not a problem. Hunger and feeling full is controlled by a different mechanism in the body. So I can feel it when I'm hungry or when I get full when I'm eating. I feel especially lucky that I can feel fullness. Otherwise, I would eat all the time and gain too much weight. A problem I might have in the future is about giving birth. Women can tell that they're about to give birth because of the pain they feel. As you can guess, people like me don't feel such pain either. That might sound good to you as well. What more do you want? You can give birth without pain, you might say. However, a mother has to push in order to give birth. But if you can't feel labor pain from the contractions, you don't know that you need to push. So I probably won't be able to give birth naturally. I'll have to give birth with a C-section. That's the future, though. I actually want to talk more about what I'm going through now. You know what the most common problem I have in my daily life is? Biting the inside of my cheek when eating. You don't do it as often as I do, because you know that it will hurt based on your past experiences. I've never felt pain, so I don't have that experience. That's why I often bite my cheek or tongue when eating. Sometimes I end up with a mouth full of blood, so I have to stop eating and wash my mouth. That's actually how I was diagnosed. When my teeth first came out, I started eating my tongue. I kept biting it, so my mouth was always filled with blood. When my mom told the doctor, he said this wasn't normal at all. They didn't know what was wrong at first because it's such a rare condition. Then they ran some tests. They figured it out when they realized that I don't feel pain. My mom always says that for her, the hardest part was when I was a baby. For example, I would be taking an afternoon nap, then my mom would see that my eyes were all purple when I woke up. Turns out I was pressing too hard when rubbing my eyes. I still have a lot of problems today, but at least my parents don't have to deal with it. So many things happened when I was in primary school. You're too young to protect yourself at that age. For example, I really wanted to skate. I begged her, but of course my mom didn't get me rollerblades. So one day, I borrowed my friend's rollerblades and went skating. When I came home, my left arm was hanging really low. I had fallen on it when I was skating. I didn't feel any pain, so I didn't know that it was broken. So I kept on skating as if nothing had happened. And fell on it a second time. If I remember correctly, I broke my arm in 6 places. Usually it takes 1 month for a broken bone to heal in kids, but I had to wear a cast for 4 months. Around that age, another crazy thing happened. I always used to have bruises all over my body. And a bandage on my arm, my leg, and even my head. One of the neighbors noticed this. She watched me for a while. She thought that there must be violence in my home for me to have so many bruises, and called the cops. 2 social workers came to our home. My parents showed the doctor's reports, so everything was okay. It's kind of tragic, but we laugh about it whenever we talk about it. I've mentioned all the downsides. Are there any benefits to not feeling pain? Maybe, but I've never explored them. Remember when it was super trendy to eat the world's spiciest pepper on YouTube? Those videos got millions of views. People made a lot of money like this. If I wanted to, I could have eaten the spiciest pepper in the galaxy. I could have been a guest on a YouTube channel without telling anyone about my condition. I could have even started my own channel after I got famous as a guest. I would have made a ton of money. I'm just joking. Don't let this video fool you. I don't really like being in front of the camera. Anyway, I don't want to make money out of something that makes my life really hard. I read somewhere that a guy in India makes a living because of this condition. He performs on the streets, sticking skewers in his body, walking on fire, and letting cars drive over his feet. Even though he doesn't feel pain, these are all really risky. He could easily harm himself. People like me live lives of danger. Why make it more dangerous with stunts like this? Unfortunately, people with my condition have a short lifespan. I've already told you so many things, so now you're aware of it too. At any time, I could go through any one of hundreds of issues. Like a heart attack. Heart attacks have some signs. If you feel chest pain, you know that you need to go to a hospital straight away, so the doctors can intervene before you have a heart attack. I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't feel any chest pain, so I would only know that I was having a heart attack once it actually began. But there is one thing about my condition that I am grateful for. I don't have to go through period pains. My mom has terrible period pains. Her pains begin days before her period and they continue for days. If I could feel pain, I'm pretty sure I'd suffer like my mom. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about that. The other thing that I really like is that I don't ever get itchy. Some people with this condition don't feel itchiness either. I'm one of those people. I've never scratched an itch to this day. No matter how many mosquitoes bite me, I don't itch. Even if the bitten area gets red or swollen, I never feel like scratching it. It's funny though because mosquitoes love me. If there are 10 people in a room, I'm the one they'll bite. If I could feel itching, then I'd be in big trouble. I guess this is how the negative parts kind of get balanced. The more I tell you about the advantages of my condition, the more I remember. Like, I don't sweat, even when it's really hot. What does that have to do with pain, you might wonder? You're right. But for some reason, people with this condition don't sweat, so I don't have to think if I smell bad. I've never spent money on deodorant in my life. My doctor has been following my condition for years now. One day he said, "The only pain you'll ever go through is heartbreak." But I haven't fallen in love yet. I know it's really stupid, but I dream of falling in love with someone, and I want that person to leave me, so that I can experience heartbreak like my doctor said. I've read about it online, and many people say that heartbreak feels like physical pain. This is the only chance I have to experience pain. Who knows? Maybe I will eventually experience it. Lastly, I must talk about this. Is there a cure for this condition? Sadly, no. But we do know the reasons and circumstances under which it's seen, so it might be possible to find a cure. However, only a few people in the world have the condition. The exact number isn't known, but it's probably less than 500. For pharmaceutical companies, fewer patients means less money, so nobody puts aside financial resources to find the cure. You know, the cure to many conditions is found through scientific research. It takes years for that research to become medicine. Maybe they'll find something in the future, but there's nothing now.
Hi guys, my name is Sarah. I'm a sleepwalker. If you don't know much about sleepwalking, you will after hearing my story. Anyone can be a sleepwalker, but it's most common among children and teens. We found out that I was a sleepwalker when I was 8 years old. One night, I walked into my parents' room and woke up my mom by shaking her. Just as she was trying to figure out what was happening, I slapped her really hard. I left the room before my mom could calm down. When I was leaving, I was saying things like, "Give it to me, it's mine, it's mine." Obviously, my parents got up right away and followed me. At first, they checked my room. When they saw I wasn't there, they started looking around the house, but they couldn't find me, so they got a little worried. Guess where they finally found me? In the bathtub. The first few times they entered the bathroom, they didn't see me because I closed the shower curtain after laying down in the tub. When my dad finally pulled the curtain open, he saw me in the tub sleeping. Unfortunately, my mom spent that whole week with a black eye. I think she had told me she'd walked into a door. My mom only told me the true story last year, laughing about it. I was a little upset that I hurt her, but compared to everything else that happened to me because of sleepwalking, this incident is pretty innocent. Especially what happened this one night. I'm sure you'll agree with me when you hear about it. But first, I need to tell you a little more about sleepwalking. You know how in movies, sleepwalkers walk around like zombies with their arms raised in front of them? That's so not true. Sleepwalking happens in the deepest part of sleep, but somehow the brain allows the person to move around. Scientists haven't figured out how exactly this happens yet. There are people who eat while sleepwalking or even drive their cars for hours. I've been told that when I sleepwalk, my eyes look like a doll's. Even though my eyes are open, my expression is blank. In the darkness, my memory helps me walk around as if they were light. For example, I can easily find doors. One year, we rented a summer house. On our first night there, I sleepwalked. At home, the door in my room is to the left of my bed, but in the summer house, it was on the right. I didn't know the house well yet, so I went to the left. My parents woke up to the sound of scratching coming from my room and ran over there. I was scratching the wall trying to find the door, and my nails were making a loud noise. Doctors usually refer to sleepwalking as a behavioral disorder rather than an illness. They still don't know what causes it, but they're almost sure that it's genetic. So if you're a sleepwalker, it's highly likely that there's another sleepwalker in your family. For me, it's my aunt. One night, when my mom was still living with her parents, she got up to go to the bathroom and saw her sister in the living room. She was vacuuming the floor. My mom knew that her sister was a sleepwalker, but at first, she thought that she was just cleaning because she spilled something on the floor. But then she saw that the vacuum wasn't connected to a power outlet. Yet, in her sleep, my aunt seemed to think she was really vacuuming. Let me tell you another story about my aunt. One night, she thought her pillow was her baby daughter. She panicked, turning the pillow over and over. Her husband woke up and watched her for a while. He asked, "Honey, what are you doing?" She cried, "Where's her head? Help me! I can't find her head." Another thing I want to tell you about is waking up sleepwalkers. A lot of people think that if you wake up a sleepwalker, they'll go into a shock and die. Yes, people actually believe this. I don't know who made this up, but it's definitely an urban legend. As someone who has been researching sleepwalkers for a long time, I haven't heard of a single person dying because they were woken up. However, it is true that if you wake up a sleepwalker, they will get confused and might even become aggressive. That's why it's not recommended to do that. Instead, it's best to carefully lead them to their bed and help them slowly lay down. My parents know this, so they never wake me. But I did wake myself up once. Let me tell you about that real quick. My mom has been making yogurt at home for years. One night, I started sleepwalking and went straight to the kitchen. I took the pot with the yogurt from the counter and put it on the floor. Then I opened the lid and stepped inside. I have no idea why I did this. That's the only good thing about being a sleepwalker. Nobody judges you for what you do because you do it unconsciously. That night, after I was done with whatever I was doing with the yogurt, I decided to go back to bed. But since my feet were covered in yogurt, I slipped and fell. And that's when I woke up. When I opened my eyes in pain, I saw the pot with the yogurt right next to me. Thankfully, I didn't hit my head. My feet felt wet, so I touched them and realized I had yogurt up to my ankles. My shock lasted a good 15 to 20 seconds. But I'm still alive and well, as you can see, even though I woke up with a big shock. I think now you have a pretty good understanding of sleepwalking. Finally, I can tell you about the most dangerous and silliest and the funniest story that happened to me because of sleepwalking. Let me start by saying that all I have in my room right now are 2 beds. One for me and one for my mom. Because she now sleeps in my room. We had to remove everything else and added a special lock to the window. We also lock the door before I go to sleep, and my mom keeps the key. Why do you think my parents had to take such drastic measures? Why did they become so alarmed recently, even though I've been a sleepwalker for years? You'll understand when I tell you about what happened 2.5 months ago. I forgot to mention one thing. Sleepwalkers don't sleepwalk every night. There are some findings about what triggers sleepwalking, but it varies depending on the person. My reason for sleepwalking is usually stress. For example, if we move to a new apartment, or if my parents had a fight, or if I have an important exam the next day, I definitely sleepwalk. The story I'm about to tell you happened on a much more stressful day. My dad was unfairly fired from the company where he'd been working for 13 years. For the first time ever, I saw him crying. He was having trouble accepting what had happened. It made me really sad to see him that way. I couldn't sleep for a long time after I went to bed. I cried for hours before finally passing out. When I woke up, I was in a different house in bed with a paralyzed 80-year-old woman. I can't even begin to tell you how scared I was. When I opened my eyes, she was the first thing I saw. She was looking at me with her blue eyes wide open. She couldn't react because she wasn't able to speak or move, but I could tell she was as scared as I was. The next day, my dad and I put on our detective hats and figured out exactly what happened the night before. It turns out that I got into bed with the woman, Mrs. Roberts, in 3 steps. Step 1, fly through the window. We figured out that I got out of bed at around 4:30 a.m. My parents say that my door was closed in the morning. That means I didn't walk around at home. When I sleepwalk, I open doors and I never close them. So I must have gone straight for the window. Whatever I was dreaming of led me to open the window and step on the windowsill. And I just kind of let myself fly down from the 3rd floor. I fell onto the awning below and then flew onto the patio umbrella of a pizza place as if I were jumping on a trampoline. I must have woken up by then because I remember hitting the umbrella quite well. I tend to confuse dream and reality in this state, so I thought it was a dream. I think it was pretty natural for me to think so, since what was happening was quite extraordinary. Parts of these falls were caught by the security cameras of nearby stores, and the footage is just like a Hollywood movie. I'm laughing about it now, but my parents couldn't recover for days after watching me fall. Now, step 2, running like crazy. Apparently, there was a refugee staying at the pizza shop at night. He ran out as he heard the noise. And he saw me, a girl who had just done a soft landing thanks to the awning and the umbrella, and who was sleeping like a baby on the sidewalk. He checked my pulse to see if I was alive. At that moment, I opened my eyes. Before he could realize what was happening, I started running, and he started running after me. He was screaming, "I'm just trying to help you." He was probably worried about getting in trouble because he was in the country illegally. I ran for a while with him chasing me, but eventually he gave up because he was a little overweight, so he got tired. Can you believe that I kept on running while I was sleeping? Well, that's exactly what happened. Finally, step 3, entering the apartment through the window. There are no witnesses here. The people who live in the apartment that I walked into say that their cat Bella goes out at night during summer, coming in and out through the same window. The cat uses Mrs. Roberts' window, so it's always open, including at night. But that night, it wasn't just Bella who used it. I don't know how I managed, but I climbed in through the window and went straight to bed. Mrs. Roberts woke up but couldn't do anything because of her paralysis. As you can see, there's a good reason for my mom to sleep in my room and for the window locks. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Sue. I have a very weird phobia. I am afraid of touching and even looking at belly buttons. I know it's silly, in fact, extremely silly, but it is what it is. The belly button that we all have is the thing that turns my life into hell. What do you mean exactly, you might ask? Here, let me break it down for you. 1. I can't touch my own belly button. 2. I don't let anyone, not even my mom, touch my belly button. 3. I can't touch anyone else's belly button. 4. I can't look when somebody is touching their own belly button. 5. And this is the worst. When I see someone whose belly button is exposed, I can't look at their belly because I fear that they will touch their belly button. They are all really bad, but the last one, not being able to look at other people's bellies, has really affected my life. I'll tell you why it's the worst in a moment. I began my story by saying that I have a belly button phobia, but some of you may not know what phobia means. Phobia is having an intense and irrational fear of something. Well, what's the difference between a regular fear and a phobia? Here's a good example. Let's say you're 5 or 6 years old and you're playing with a dog. The dog bites your hand, and of course you get really scared. After this, you might develop a fear of dogs. You don't want to touch them because you're afraid they'll bite. This is called being afraid of dogs, and it's normal, because it's based on a negative experience that you had. Having a phobia of dogs is a different thing. You might have a dog phobia even if you haven't had any bad experiences with dogs, and if you have a dog phobia, you'd freak out even when seeing a tiny cute puppy. Let me tell you how it goes with me. What do I feel when I see someone else's belly button? First, my heart starts beating really fast. I start sweating all over and I can't breathe. I feel pins and needles in my hands and feet. This is what simply catching a glimpse of a belly button does to me. If, God forbid, I see someone touch their belly button, then I go completely insane. I cover my face with both hands so I don't have to see what they're doing, but it's as if an invisible force makes me keep looking and I start to make really weird noises. Once, a friend of my mom's came over with her daughter, who is the same age as me. We were hanging out in my room. Suddenly, she pulled up her shirt and showed me her belly button. I got my belly button pierced last week. It was so painful but worth it. Do you think it looks good? She asked. While she was saying this, she was touching her piercing. It all happened so fast that I couldn't tell her to stop. My first reaction was to close my eyes, but I could still see the image of her belly button in my head. I clenched my fists and started making noises like a wild animal. I sat on the floor with my head in my hands. I kept making these noises as I rocked myself back and forth. When I came to myself, my mother was in the room. She said that the girl had run out from our house. Her mother had gone after her to see what was wrong. After half an hour, they still weren't back. If I were her, I'd be scared of me too. I'm all flushed just talking about it now. Obviously, I'm not the only one with this weird phobia. It's called omphalophobia. Like most medical terms, it comes from Greek. Omphalophobia is most common among women, and it often starts in adolescence. Mine started 2.5 years ago. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. In the summer, I often sleep wearing shorts. I began feeling uncomfortable with the waistband touching my belly button. I started waking up in the middle of the night because of this, and I realized that something was off. One morning, I thought, maybe there is a wound on my belly button and that's why it feels uncomfortable. And I touched my belly button very lightly. It felt like I was touching my internal organs. I immediately felt like I was going to faint, and I blacked out. I never touched my belly button again, and never let anyone else touch it either. Until the day that I'm going to tell you about. Unfortunately, this phobia affects my life more than you'd think. For example, I used to really enjoy taking showers, but now it's like torture because I'm always afraid of touching my belly button. I can't go to the beach or the pool anymore. Just imagining seeing dozens of belly buttons around me gives me stomach cramps. But these are things I can control. I can stop going to the beach, and that's that. But sometimes I come across belly buttons by accident, like when I end up in an elevator with someone whose belly button is exposed, or see an actor's belly button on a huge movie screen at the theater. I'm sure you'd pity me if you saw me in these moments because I'd be having a panic attack. So how can I speak so comfortably about something that I'm so sensitive about? I keep saying belly button over and over. Do I not feel uncomfortable? I do, but not as much as I used to, because I've been going to therapy for 4.5 months. I avoided going to therapy for as long as I could, but it took a really bad experience for me to finally start going. One night, I was studying for a test. I felt a pain around my belly button. At first, I tried ignoring it, but it soon became unbearable. I couldn't Google it because I was scared that when I typed in belly button pain, thousands of belly button photos would come up. I was going crazy. I finally called my sister Callie and told her what was going on. She panicked when she saw how much pain I was in and wanted to tell our parents. "Can you Google it first? Let's see if it could be something serious," I said. Callie started looking around on health sites. One website had a list of reasons based on the characteristics of the pain. She asked me what kind of pain it was. "I feel like my stomach is being cut with a knife," I said. According to the website, this type of pain could mean that your appendix has burst. My appendix bursting? That was the worst thing that could happen to someone like me. My heart started pounding. Think about it. The doctor was going to examine me by touching my belly button. My mom, my dad, the nurses, everyone was going to look at my belly button. And the worst part is the appendicitis surgery. I couldn't breathe. My whole abdomen, including my belly button, was going to become the center of attention. Lots of people were going to be touching it, looking at it, and talking about it. I blacked out at that moment. I remember telling Callie, "Don't tell Mom and Dad, I'm ready to die," as I was about to faint. I was in a hospital room when I woke up. Callie's diagnosis was correct. The problem was really my appendix. The funny thing is, when the doctor started examining me, I woke up. In fact, when he was touching my belly button, I opened my eyes and watched him. They took me into surgery right away, but I don't remember any of this. My brain probably took control of the situation and decided to knock me out. Which is for the best because there's no way I could have gone through this consciously. The surgery went well, but things were really difficult afterwards. You know enough about me by now to figure out how it went. I don't need to say it all over again. Let me just say this. We had to go back 4 times to change the wound dressing. This alone may have cost me 4 years of my life. Once I recovered, my parents didn't waste any time taking me to a special psychiatry clinic. It's a center for the treatment of phobias. They created a treatment plan after the first meeting, and I started seeing a therapist regularly. The clinic has been around for 12 years, and I was only their second patient with a belly button phobia. During the treatment, I met with a lot of other patients. I noticed that the most common phobia is the fear of heights. It's called acrophobia. These people can't even look at a photo that was taken from a high place. Another common phobia is the fear of flying. These people are terrified of getting on a plane. People were really surprised when I told them about my phobia. They found it hard to believe. Only 2 of them didn't react like that because they had such unusual phobias that they thought mine wasn't so strange. Should I tell you quickly? They are really interesting. One is called gelatophobia. It comes from the Greek word gelos, which means laughter. You guessed it, right? Yep, fear of laughter. People with this phobia are afraid of both laughter itself and people who are laughing. This makes them terrified of things like jokes and anything that can make people around them laugh because they are so scared of laughter. The person who had this phobia was a 40-year-old academic specializing in ancient Egyptian history. He said that he found history boring, but still decided to pursue it as a career because he thought that people who are into history are boring people who rarely smile. Basically, he chose this profession to be around people who never laugh. When I met him, he had made a lot of progress during his treatment, so he was doing okay. He even asked me to tell a joke to prove that he was much better. The other really interesting phobia is cacophobia. It comes from the Greek word kako, which means bad or unpleasant. What do you think this phobia is about? This one's harder to guess. It's the fear of ugliness. People with cacophobia can't look at the faces of people who they think are ugly. In fact, they can't even be around them. For example, if someone who they think is ugly sits next to them on a plane, they have a physical reaction. The woman who was being treated for cacophobia was in her 30s. She said she rates everyone's looks on a scale from 1 to 10 and has to stay away from those whom she judges to be lower than a 7. Don't get angry with her over it because it's totally out of her control. Please remember what a phobia is: having an extreme and irrational fear of something. My treatment is still in progress, and as you can see, it's going pretty well because I don't have any difficulties talking about belly buttons. I still can't look at other people's belly buttons, but I've made peace with mine. I even started touching it once in a while. Thanks for listening to me. If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to this channel. Bye!